to gather garlands and comb and dress. She made me welcome to that place, which was an earthly paradise. With what sensuous immediacy French romance ripens to Dante, Giotto, the music of da Cascia. I am a pilgrim who goes crying for alms. Laurie's idleness becomes the Leia of whom Dante dreams, gathering flowers to adorn herself at the mirror of contemplation. And then he sees her in earthly paradise, Matilda across the stream. You make me remember where and what Proserpina was. That time her mother lost her and she lost the spring. Tu mi fai rimembra dove qual era Proserpina nel tempo che perdette la madre lei ed ella primavera. A Gothic yearning and delight which Milton could only wonder at and be raised above himself, not that fair field of Enna, where Proserpine gathering flowers, herself a fairer flower, by gloomy Dis was gathered. In the Romance of the Rose, 2 generations lead from that aristocratic source to Jean de Meung's bourgeois continuation, such a compendium of realism and sense as feeds 2 centuries of late Gothic, as in art, this Strasbourg Saint-Louis and his wife. The praise of my beauty was everywhere. There were night knockings at my door, brawls when I ditched one for another, lopped off limbs and lives together. My body was so strong and supple, it could have minted coins in double. But I was foolish, young and cheery, and had no schooling in love's theory. Experience has made me sage, in which I have spent the flower of my age. Wise too late, the day has waned, the door that swung cleaves to the jamb. Unvisited I wait alone, no loving touch from anyone. Youths, untiring of me once, pass me by without a glance, or if they see what they adored, wrinkled hag is their best word. Realism a century later reflects that 1280 shift. Charles the Wise of France as Saint-Louis with his wife, or Chaucer's wife of Bath, enfleshed out of Jean de Meung. Experience, though non auctorité wherein this world is richt enough for me, to speak of woe that is in mariage, of which I am expert in all min age. But age, alas, that all wool envenume, hath me bereft me beauty and me pith. The human miracle mediated by the age of Dante. But Lord Christ, when that it remembereth me upon me youth and on me jollity, it tickleth me about min herte roote, that he have had me world as in me team. Even Villon's phallic helmeter, who sees her mirror image young and old, is of the same mind, though the renaissance of body, petit tétin, hanches charnues, round little breasts, fleshy haunches, intensifies, as in Donatello's Magdalene, a dance of death, the shoulders humped and ruinous, breasts, alas, quite fallen in, haunches like the breasts gone lean. Les épaules toutes bossues, mamelles croix, toutes retraites, telles les hanches que les têtes. The realism of Strasbourg is a century and a half before Villon's claim and cry of flesh, an eruptive vitality on a cathedral door, where the prince of this world offers the foolish gay virgins an apple in which he grins at the worm, Dante's vermo reo che il mondo fora. Though this humor of damnation is closer to Aucassin's I want to go to hell with the fine ladies and noble lords, or to Chaucer's nest of friars under the devil's tail. Satanas, show forth thin airs, and let the freres say, where is the nest of freres in this plaza? The 1300 shift is from sacred incorporation to the release of individual and secular energies in the loosening faith frame. At Strasbourg, virtues sharp-browed as holy virgin satyrs, kings keen as falcons, explore a drama of capricious force, while music in the more complex time divisions of Pierre de la Croix seems another such heraldic lion reared against residual bonds. It is the northern transition to Ars Nova, the new art, facing which Giovanni Pisano reminds us again of the full dynamic of love in Dante, seed of virtue and vice, amor, sementa in voi d'ogni virtute, ed ogni operazion che merta pene. So Paul and Francesca, born on the dark wind, like doves to the sweet nest. O living creature, gracious and benign, che visitando vai per l'aere perso, noi che tignemmo il mondo di sanguigno. Love took him, love took me, love brought us to one death. Amor, amor, amor. That day we read in it no further. In England, a quieter harmony, in the Lady Chapel and Chapter House of Wells, 1300 and after, balances within Gothic an enlightenment of ease. So with the Rosa Fragrans, a roundelay to Mary. Typical, the perfection of the small wooden-roofed church, the comfort of every parish, where in France small churches mostly ape the large. Chadsley Corbett already implies the well-being and liberal autonomy of the middle, which made Shakespeare's island this blessed plot, this earth, this realm, this England. The Lincoln Queen Margaret is perhaps of the early 1300s. Its human naturalness suggests the music of the 3rd and 6th, intervals which the English theorist Addington of the same time first justifies, and on grounds of appeal, voices lead them forth into a sweet mixture. Yet this filling in of the human context accepts the old containment. What it would take to break that limitation was a Promethean thrust. Giovanni Pisano's last work, the now fragmentary tomb of Margaret of Luxembourg, about 1312, shapes the flesh and person of some soul rising on the slopes of purgatory. It is there that the composer Casella sings Dante's canzona, Amor che nella mente mi ragiona, which, if it survived, might complete a cognate trio. Having nothing of Casella's, we settle for a second-generation Sanctus by Lorenzo of Florence. It claims, for all the caudal advance of the English, another realm of consciousness. In the Vita Nuova, or New Life, of 1294, Dante tells of his first meeting at the age of 9 with the 8-year-old Beatrice. She appeared clothed in a most noble color, the humble and becoming crimson of the blood, cinctured and adorned in a style suited to her youthful age. At that instant I say truly that the spirit of life which dwells in the most secret chambers of the heart began to tremble with such violence that it appeared fearfully in the remotest pulses, and trembling spoke these words, Ecce Deus fortior me, qui veniens dominabitur mihi. Here is a God stronger than I, who coming shall rule over me. Go back a century and a half to Abelard's no less personal History of My Calamity. And now, my friend, I'm going to expose to you all my weakness. There was in Paris a young creature, formed in the prodigality of nature, Eloise. I saw her, I loved her. We were united first in the dwelling that sheltered our love, and then in the hearts that burned within us. That earlier love was broken on the rack and wheel of medieval contempt of the world, appearing as profane, self-condemning fire. Whereas in Dante, personal love is sacredly affirmed. As he promised in the Vita Nuova, Beatrice is glorified as no other woman, both holy wisdom and the smiling actuality of a remembered love. Garlanded with olive over a white veil, my lady appeared to me, a brightness clothed under a green mantle in the color of living flame. And my spirit, which for a long time now had not been overcome with such an awe, trembling and speechless as before in her presence, of its first love, again felt all the power. Where Abelard, if the letters are his, wrote to Eloise, I satisfied my wretched desires in thee. Weep for thy Saviour, not for thy seducer, for thy Redeemer, not for thy defiler. Of course, the incorporation of earthly beauty had already begun in the 12th century and would be the flame of Gothic. It is Peter the Venerable who, taking Abelard's body to Eloise, opens paradise to their love. Thus, dear and venerable sister in God, him to whom you were united after your tie in the flesh by the better and stronger bond of divine love, the Lord now takes in your stead, or as another you, and warms in his bosom for the day of his coming, to restore him to you by his grace. How the brief delight of flesh has flowered since then. Upper Rhine, time of Dante, with the Douce Debonaire of Escurel, executed in Paris, 1303. Most of all in Italy, beauty was sanctified, as by Guido Guinicelli, who in the canzone Dante echoes Al cor gentil ripara sempre amore, when demanded of the old god, "By what idolatry did you take vain love for me?" answers, "No fault of mine, if you gave love your semblance." What had prepared for that tender enactment? In this Noli me tangere, by Duccio, 1308-11, the flame of Gothic line penetrates the Byzantine. That Byzantine which, spread from its Eastern revival over Italy, gives the new art an immediate Dark Age ground, an unleavened weight, 2 centuries in France had almost smiled away. Ascetic base for the high seriousness Arnold praised in Dante. I saw this threshing floor that frets our hearts, stretched from the high hills to the river's mouth. While from the 11th century down, the Romanesque birth in Pisa and Florence had reached for the proportions of Renaissance, as if to arrive there without Gothic intervention. So the Badia of Fiesole, or San Miniato al Monte, or the Baptistery, where Dante says he broke a font to save one drowning, nel mio bel San Giovanni, from the Florence of his great-grandfather Cacciaguida, when the wealthy, Paradise 15, were content with bare leather, and their women folk with spindle and thread. But the French tutelage had already begun. It was from Abelard that Arnold of Brescia took the passion which roused Rome, and St. Francis had, as it were, St. Bernard for stern father, and for romance mother, troubadour song. That so individual a love should have been chartered by the Church, rather than being pushed like his followers into heresy, was a miracle requiring the explanation of Innocent III's dream, as Giotto would paint it a century later, of Francis holding up the tottering church. In the art of St. Francis' own time, Antelami, also swayed from Provence, shows such worship of the natural as Francis in his far-reaching free-verse hymn, Altissimo, omnipotente, bon Signore. Be praised, O Lord, with all of these thy creatures. First of all, for our noble brother the sun, who lightens the day here about us. He is fair and bright with rare splendor, and stands for a sign, Most High, of thy dominion. Be praised, O Lord, for sister moon and the stars, for our brother the cool wind, and airs moist and serene, and all weathers, the sustenance and nurture of thy creatures. Be praised, O Lord, in gentle sister water, who is helpful and kind, and very clean and comely. Be praised, O Lord, in swift brother fire, by whom the night is beautified and brightened, and he is lusty and red, and strong and jocund. Be praised, O Lord, in our sister Mother Earth, who bears nourishing fruits and colored flowers and simples. Be praised, O Lord, for our sister the death of the body, and may we serve thee in the bonds of meekness. The rebirth counterpole was Frederick II's revival of Rome, which founded the modern state. Here is his answer to papal calumny. Let those who shrink from my support have the shame as well as the galling burden of slavery. Before this generation and the generations to come, I will have the glory of resisting this tyranny. This bust from his destroyed triumphal arch is probably of Piero della Vigna, who appears among the suicides in Dante's Hell. I held both keys of Frederick's heart. But the whole attempt was hounded into hell by the winds of a bleak season, such as blow even in the statuary, no direct road to antique recovery. The Mirror of Perfection tells us that Francis wished to supplicate Frederick, for the love of God and me, to make a special law that no man should take or kill our sisters the larks, nor do them any harm. Likewise that all the podestas, or mayors of towns, and the lords of castles and villages should require men every year on Christmas Day to throw grain outside the cities and castles, that our sisters the larks and other birds may have something to eat. Curious if the supplicant had come a few years later, when Frederick was lopping the hands and feet off certain papal messengers. In the faith grip, gentle Francis, emaciated with fever and fasting, is stigmatized on the rock hill by the seraph of fire, while enlightened Frederick, accused Antichrist, rages at the clergy, slaves to the world, drunk with self-indulgence. Yet it was from Frederick's court in Apulia that poetic currents flowed to Tuscany, and that Nicola Pisano brought the massive Roman sarcophagus style of the 1260 Pisa pulpit, another premature and perhaps abortive lunge at Renaissance. Romanesque Byzantine and revived classic are here. The missing element is Gothic. All over northern Europe that quest was finding its way. In the Master of Naumburg, about the same year, by the German genius for observation. While the marble forms of Nicola Pisano reach for the stateliness of an unknown future, to fall back in mannered grandeur to the unthawed weight of Dark Age Rome, nobly still born. France burned with the art that could thaw, the love that could give them life. In the immediate grace of this melting, the smile runs through cheek, arms, hand, every fold of the robe. Imagine a chemistry by which that spark could be poured through the hollow fullness of the Father, Nicola. See it slide, gleaming, into solution there. The shapes stretch themselves, swirl, and become those of the Son, Giovanni, in the other pulpit of 13:2 to 11, where the smile wreathes the body in sensuous flame. It is the smile which runs through all grades of Dante's heaven, il riso dell'universo, the smile of the universe, lo splendor degli occhi suoi ridenti, the splendor of her laughing eyes, a smile that can make paradise itself, for in her eyes burns such a smile, I thought I plumbed with mine the depth of my grace and paradise. It crowns purgatory with the coming of Beatrice. It hovers with yearning tenderness, the desired smile of romance over the shadows of hell. By some inexplicable transmutation, that dark age flying world, for all its violence and the brunt of timeless rewards, grows benign and glad, nell'aere dolce che dal sol s'allegra. In both pulpits, Samson is the heroic nude. In Dante, it is Ulysses who turns the classical to infinite search. Nicola's Samson has the frame, but lacks the force. The will and desire that drove me on to discover the ultimate secrets of man, both of the evil and the good, so I put out upon the high seas peril. We set our vessel's stern against the morning, and of our oars made wings for the mad flight, always a little on the left hand gaining. Already night saw all the stars that circle the other pole, and our own dropped so low it did not rise above the ocean floor. 5 times the light that waxes under the moon was kindled and was quenched, since first we entered the ocean guarded by the pillared pass, when there appeared before our eyes a mountain, brown with the distance, and it seemed so high that I had never witnessed such another, and we were glad, but gladness turned to grief. For out of the new land came a great whirlwind, and on the forepart of the vessel beat. 3 times it made it whirl with all the water. On the 4th the poop went up, and the prow went down, and the sea closed over us as it pleased another. Hemmed in the allegory where that mountain is purgatory, not open but to grace, what sweeps through the passage like wind in the sails is a paean to the reckless voyage, il folle volo. And Giovanni's Samson Hercules, for all his Gothic ribcage, has the talk Michelangelo was to learn from. Though what art can loom like the Nova Terra over the round of water, una montagna, bruna per la distanza. As Byzantine broke to Gothic passion, there arose in Umbria, 1259, a frenzy of penitential flagellants, a mania of atonement, in which Jacopone da Todi, a lawyer whose wife had been crushed under a scaffold, went smeared with tar and feathers like a beast on all fours, lived to compose the Stabat Mater Dolorosa, Juxta Crucem Lacrimosa. The Mother of Sorrows stood under the cross in tears, and in Italian, the angular, savage tenderness of the crucifixion. Now the mother and John one grief has thrown down, arm in arm they are found at the cross of the Son. Or his cry for the lash of disease, his punishment for God's death, che me creasti in tua diletta, ed io t'ho morto a villania. Against which the lighter fancies of Gallic illumination enter with the play of Folgore di San Gimignano's Sonnets on the Seasons. Horses are galloping, coursers of Spain, and men clothed all in the fashion of France sing and dance in the manner of Provence. The Italian feat is to blend in 2 generations those 3 style currents, Romanesque Byzantine, the Gothic wave, classical revival. And the resulting leap, as by Trotsky's law of combined development, is from Capo di Marcovaldo, about 1266, to his pupil Cimabue, about 1280, who, as Dante says, bore the cry until he was displaced in turn by his own pupil, Giotto, after 1300, in whose style of epic observation the 3 currents meet. As in Giovanni Pisano, but with more calm, the very fabric of longing smiles, lassù di sopra, in la vita serena, up there, in the serene life. In Dante it is the skipping 4-stress line, which, varying the pentameter as much as anything, suspends joy in mystery. Beatrice's voice of angel, con angelica voce in sua favella. Like dawn in purgatory, earth brightening through its veil, dolce color d'oriental zafiro, the sweet color of oriental sapphire that gathered in the serene face of the skies, pure from the center even to the first circle, restored forgotten